Dinner Conversations is brought to you by ChildFund, a community development organization that has been envisioning a world where every child is free to live at their fullest potential, no matter where they're from or what challenges they face since 1938.
Partner with us and our good friends at ChildFund to change the world and the life of a child by considering sponsoring a child today.
It really does take so little to make a difference.
Visit childfund.org/dinner conversations.
A child is waiting. Today's guest is Eric Metaxas. Now, Eric is an author, a scholar. His book on Martin Luther, incredible. I love it. And I read his book on Bonhoeffer.
Yep.
And Bill Gaither is his biggest fan. I'm telling you, I've never seen Bill Gaither be a fan of someone, but he loves Eric Metaxas. And come to find out, Eric is funny.
Yeah, he's super funny. He's not just, he seems like this intellectual, heady type. He's a New Yorker. He's got cool glasses. He always wears suits, and he writes about these amazing people in history, especially in our Christian spiritual history. But he is super funny. And he talks about, in this first segment, about a common culture where at one point in time as Americans, we had more shared ideals, and so conversation was a little bit easier because we came to the table already with some common experiences. And that has changed a lot more recently. So we're gonna talk with him some. We're at a special conference.
National Religious Broadcasters Conference.
Yep, at Opryland Hotel here in Nashville. A new location and a fun conversation with our friend, Eric Metaxas.
And there's one seat left at the table, and it's yours. Let's join the conversation.
And who are you guys again?
I'm Mark Lowry.
You're Mark?
And I'm
this
Andrew
is
Greer.
You're Andrew, and you're hosting this show?
Right.
And have we started rolling? Are we on?
We're rolling.
We're rolling?
Yeah. So you're the world's greatest authority.
You know what? Professor Irwin Corey, the famous Professor Irwin Corey, whom I had the privilege of meeting, he always billed himself as the world's greatest authority. But he passed away about a year ago, and I thought the mantle, I prayed for a double portion. I am the world's greatest authority now, only because he's no longer with us.
Right.
So yeah, I'm the world's greatest authority.
And I got-
generally speaking. Generally speaking.
I don't know if
yeah.
you know who Bill Gaither is.
I think I do.
Because you mentioned his name the other day
You
on
think
the
I'm
show.
some idiot?
Well, I don't know. You're from New York. My question is...
Oh,
Here he
snap.
goes.
That hurt. Is this microphone on?
Yeah.
No, you are Bill Gaither's hero. I have never... and I don't say that lightly.
I
Let
don't
me
even
explain.
Now I'm real confused.
Okay, let me tell you. He reads all your books.
Bill Gaither reads my book.
Yes.
The 81-year-old Bill Gaither.
Yes. He reads everything that he can get his hands on, especially. He called me the other day and said, I've just read a great book on Martin Luther. And I said, who wrote it? Eric Metaxas. I said, well, that's Bonhoeffer, because we both had read that. And I said, I'm going to interview him next week. He said, can I come? And he was going to fly down.
But he can't make it.
I don't know. Now, you mentioned him on your show the other day, but you never
I always mention him as a punchline.
What is the joke?
I'm not trying to be mean, but I'm saying that I'll have like Supertramp will be playing, or something like that will be playing, or Amy Winehouse or something.
you
I'll
go.
say, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, that's the great Bill Gaither, and I just keep going.
Wow.
And today we were playing some music up there, and I said, oh, that's just fantastic. That's the lovely Sandy Patty. And some people in the audience were like, that's not Sandy Patty. It's like, no, it was Elton John. That was a joke.
Well, when I read your books, I would never know that your humor is a major part of who you are.
Not really.
Well, it seems to be.
Satire,
And it also is kind of humor where if someone doesn't get hurt, it's not that funny.
Whoa. I've just been called mean.
No, but it is I love that kind of humor. Because it's like pointing out the truth.
Well, a little bit. I think that some humor has an edge, but here's the thing. If your humor has an edge, you can still do it in a loving way. There's mean humor. Not all edgy humor has to be mean.
Right.
And I think that my love language, I joke around, there's a sixth love language. Don Rickles and I are the only ones who got it. But the sixth love language is to make fun of someone in public to express your love. I tease people
Right.
to express my affection. That's a fact.
Right.
That's a fact. And I've driven away 4 wives. That's not true. But
I'm starting to get it.
yeah. So, but it's kind of funny because it is true that that's how I express. I think I got that from my mom. My mom was always joking around and teasing and stuff. It's a way of expressing affection. It's what I do. And the older you get, the more you feel free to kind of speak your mind in a way. And I think that there's a joy in that. But again, you know, you want to do it in such a way that you're not really. I mean, if you can serve God with sarcasm, then it's good sarcasm. But if you're not serving God with the sarcasm, you need to cut out the sarcasm.
Is there ever like a rub, a New Yorker in an evangelical world? Like those don't go together.
Yeah.
Well, theoretically they don't, but I think that's part of the problem. That's kind of my raison d'etre. My life's calling is to be who God made me to be, where I am. And I think that the Lord is the one that sent me to Yale and gave me the credentials that I could fool people into thinking I'm some kind of intellectual or whatever.
Right.
It's the glasses.
Right, yeah.
And the point is that we believers have been underrepresented dramatically in the world of the secular elites. And that has caused a very bizarre skewing in the culture. In other words, if you watch TV or movies or whatever, you'd get the idea that anybody with a brain is sure that God didn't exist and we evolved out of the primordial soup by random mutations and there's no meaning to life. Now, nobody actually drills down into what that means, but they kind of just sort of act like, yeah, all the smart people know that. And all those jugheads who believe in Jesus and all that crazy stuff, well, we just don't talk about them. And the fact of the matter is that the greatest people I've ever known intellectually, emotionally, in terms of humor, have been people who have a full-throated Christian faith. So I thought, how come the world doesn't portray that? So part of what I want to do with my life is to tell people, hey, there are a lot of extraordinary human beings that you would admire on every level who believe Jesus rose from the dead, was born of a virgin, did these miracles, walked on water, and they're bright people who understand that, you know, maybe this sounds odd, but it actually happened. I mean, that's part of who I am.
Wait, let me ask, how involved, I'm sorry, I'm spilling my water.
Is this prop food?
Yeah,
No,
you
you
can
can
eat
eat
it.
it.
No, you eat
Oh, like I'm going to eat it on camera. Oh,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
That'll show how human
That's all we
are.
do. Yeah, that's right.
So now, do you think the divide I'm seeing in Christians even over politics?
Yeah.
When I was growing up, my grandmother, who was a Republican, took my grandfather, who was a Democrat, to the voting booth. They'd vote each other out and then come home.
Yeah.
What has changed? Why
That we
can't we
can't
have
coexist.
a civil discussion anymore?
Well,
I mean,
that's complicated,
I used
brother.
to get Jerry Falwell's Christmas card and Tony Campolo's Christmas
Right.
card.
Well,
I'd sit
can
them
I tell you
side by
something?
side.
But now hold on, because Tony Campolo, if he's your representative of the hard left, there's your answer. Tony Campolo, you might disagree with him, but you don't think of him as a screeching ninny. You think of him as somebody who has some points to be made.
Right. And they're in love with Jesus.
And
Both
who
of
actually
them were in
love
love with Jesus
But also,
and came to...
but to be fair, Tony Campolo did not take positions that I would say that's insane, that's unbiblical. I mean, maybe more recently he's taken some that I would quibble with, but you cannot compare him to some of the voices that are out there today.
Okay.
So you see a difference in the current climate?
I see several differences. I think that there was, first of all, we had a common culture. We had a culture where we had more in common than we do now, and what we had in common enabled us to have our differences with civility. Something has happened, it's been accelerated, you could say, by the internet, that has made that less possible. I wrote a book called If You Can Keep It, which is all about America. And in it, I try to stress, what does it mean to be an American for all Americans? If we can all focus on that, it really will change the things that we differ about.
Can we do that? I mean,
I would argue, well, look, I don't think there are always going to be insane, angry people
on both sides.
And on both sides. And I'm sitting with 2 of them. But here's the issue. Despite you guys, there are people out there that I think they're just trying to raise their kids, and they're trying to have, they don't want to have arguments all the time. They want to understand the basics. And so what we have done, I really do think that in the 60s, a cultural narrative took hold that was fundamentally anti-American, anti-God, anti-family. It's just a fact. Now, those folks all had good points, and that's why those narratives came into being, right? If your father's abusive, you might end up hating men. You might end up not thinking marriage is a good idea. You might not, all these things come out of a good place. But when that narrative takes hold, it's an entirely negative narrative takes hold, and you start suppressing the other side of the story, that family could be the biggest blessing on planet Earth, or that some men are the greatest, most self-sacrificial human beings who ever walked the planet, and they died for their wives and their children and strangers, and let's celebrate those people. Once you buy into a narrative that says, no, we don't want to talk about that. We just want to talk about how men are bad and masculinity is by definition toxic and harmful, whatever. Once that narrative takes hold, you can't have a substantive conversation because you're only representing one side. And something happened in the culture because really of the sexual revolution where that narrative took hold. I argue it's because of the rise of mass media. In other words, before mass media, information was processed more locally. But once you have a mass media, whatever that mass media thinks is going to be magnified with megaphones and, on and on and on. And it just so happens that those cultural elites bought into that worldview more than not. And so they live in a bubble, but then that bubble is presented every day via TV or movies or the culture so that you really don't have an ability to compete with that. And so I think that narrative took over, and to say that I'm proud to be an American suddenly for a lot of segments of culture became a dirty word. We don't say that because America did this and did this and this. Well, of course, every reality is a little complicated, but when you swallow it to the point where you say, well, I can't say I'm proud to be an American, now you got a problem. Because if you understand the sins of other countries, you're getting silly, you're getting simplistic. But I think we're living in a culture that's kind of grabbed onto these narratives. And I just want to rant for 40 more minutes.
Yeah.
Let me rant.
I would love it.
But so has that eliminated our ability to think critically? I mean, is mass media just kind of eliminated our...
It hasn't eliminated it, but it's gone a long way toward harming it. I mean, one of the most depressing things for me is I'll post something on Facebook or on Twitter, and the responses that must be categorized as idiotic. Why? Not because I disagree with them, but because they have clearly not understood what I even said.
Right.
Now, some of them are unable to understand what I said. Others, who are far worse, didn't even try.
Right.
They just saw an opportunity to flick back.
With their own biases
And at that moment, you realize this is useless. In other words, I don't think you need to have a substantive conversation on Twitter, but it can be thoughtful. You can post a thoughtful article. People can think about it. But what a lot of people do is they use it as a place to vent. And, that's not biblical. You're not blessing people if you're just sitting there, you're angry, and you thought, well, I can kick a few dogs today. Let me get down their Twitter, and I can just bang, 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 bang. So you really do have an opportunity to behave that way that it simply didn't exist. You literally had to kick a literal dog if you just wanted to take out your feelings. But today, you can do it on social media all day long.
What I love about your authorship, what I love about usually what you have to say, is the critical thinking among evangelicals, among Christianity, that this true faith is not a leap into the dark, it's always a leap into the light. This idea that blind faith is not a thing.
No.
Even though I grew up in somewhat of an environment, though my parents filtered it differently for me, it was this kind of don't ask questions.
Well, see, that's the point, is it cuts both ways, right? Blind faith, I get the idea of blind faith, but at the same time, we want to believe in what's true. If Jesus didn't rise from the dead, if he was not the Messiah, if he's not the third person, second person of the Trinity, we don't want to waste our lives believing in him. We want it to be true.
Right.
Now, it's not about apologetics and proving that it's true, but at the same time, let's not pretend that it's not true.
Right.
Let's not pretend that we can all believe whatever we want. I choose to believe Jesus died on a cross for my sins. Either he did or didn't.
Yeah.
And that's an aspect that, because of the Enlightenment, we've kind of divided into there's rationality and then there's spirituality. And you realize, look, you could talk about quantum physics as though it's all theory, but the point is that people say, well, no, this is real. Just because I can't see it, I don't say whatever. I'm still trying to figure it out. And I think when it comes to spirituality and faith, we're still compelled to, we still ought to use our minds to try to understand it. And again, to get back to this sort of narrative, since the 60s, I think we've been living in a culture that says faith is sort of for crazy people, so we're going to kind of put it over there. And we're going to let like African Americans and other exotic people, they can have their faith because they need it. But those of us in the newsroom and stuff, we're gonna be hyper rational. We're not going to get sucked into that crazy stuff. So we're going to let some groups have that. We're not going to criticize them, but we've already decided that's just crazy talk. And my attitude is like, it's not crazy talk. The greatest people on the planet have believed this stuff. And it's important for us to understand that our faith, it's either true or it's not. Jesus either rose from the dead bodily or he didn't. Now, nobody can force you to believe it, but the idea that who's to say, well, you know, that's like saying, well, who's to say if Columbus sailed here in 1492 or 1392? Who's to say? We ought to be dealing with reality. And I think the church has fallen into this trap of, we're going to have our little religious corner over here and all that other stuff for the big boys, politics and policy and science, that's over here. And you think that's not, God is supposed to be in everything, you know?
And you can speak to that, right? Because your background, would you say that comes from like agnosticism, like before you had your conversion experience?
I don't know. You know, I don't really know. I mean, I think that here's what I would say. I think that because I went to Yale University, I was surrounded by people who were not like the people I grew up with. I mean, I grew up in a working class home. And so suddenly you're around all these like, you know, smart people who come from wealthy families and stuff. And they all act as though this Christian stuff or whatever, or conservative politics, it's all like nutcases. So you kind of drink that Kool-Aid. And then when I came to faith, supernaturally, the Lord spoke to me in a dream. It was like this mind-blowing experience. Suddenly I thought, well, now I got to deal with all those friends of mine that are going to think I'm crazy. I know I'm not crazy, but I'm going to have some vocabulary to be able to talk to them in case they're interested. A lot of them won't be, but you know, let me see. So I started reading books and things, and the more I read, the more I was kind of scandalized. And I think I'm perpetually scandalized by this, that the reality that I encountered in all these amazing books and minds and people doesn't exist in American reality. It's as if those names don't exist. Like you'll never hear about all the people that I have read about and stuff. It's like a separate reality. We're going to live in our little secular culture, and we're going to act like that religion stuff. It's for those people that they need a crutch. Sure. Maybe they've been oppressed, or they come from a poor home, or whatever it is. They can have that, but we know it's just crazy. And I more and more, I read more and more books, and I thought, not only is this not crazy, but this is dramatically true. It explains everything. I mean, even science, when I wrote my book on miracles, when I was doing all the reading about the fine-tuned universe, and Christopher Hitchens said that he was asked, what is the most compelling argument on the other side, on the God side? He said, without question, the fine-tuned universe, blah, 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 blah. He was like, that's the one that kind of scares us, all of us, me and my colleagues on the atheist side. Well, when I wrote a piece in the Wall Street Journal on this subject, on the fine-tuned universe, people came out of the woodwork basically saying it's stupid, it was disproved 1 million years ago. And I thought, look, first of all, A, that's not true. B, Christopher Hitchens says it's not true. Christopher Hitchens says that even though he's maybe not buying it, it's a sophisticated, troubling argument. Right. But I'm saying again, we kind of live in a culture where when do you ever get that argument? It's just, you're always getting this idea that, oh, there's zillions of planets and there's life evolving out of puddles everywhere. And you know, we're just what? That's just unscientific.
Dinner Conversations is brought to you by ChildFund, a community development organization that has been envisioning a world where every child is free to live at their fullest potential, no matter where they're from or what challenges they face. And they've been doing this since 1938. ChildFund's mission is to help bring positive and lasting change to communities around the world by removing the barriers that keep children from realizing and reaching their dreams.
Worldwide, over 570 million children are living in extreme poverty. For too many families, access to health care is a luxury, and opportunities for education and employment are extremely limited, forcing parents to often make choices that hinder rather than promote their children's futures. ChildFund's community development programs address these issues so that children around the world don't just have to survive, they can truly thrive.
Today, it is the support from sponsors like you that allows ChildFund to focus on the children and build lasting relationships with the communities like the ones we visited in Guatemala. ChildFund strives to help provide communities with critical necessities including education, clean drinking water, food and nutrition, basic health care and hygiene, and helping children and parents alike know and understand their basic human rights.
We believe every one of us have been created unique with value, on purpose, and in love by God. We have been created in the image of God. The children we met in Guatemala are image bearers of our Creator. Think about that.
Yeah.
And I believe to love God best, we must learn to love our neighbors even better. Our neighbors like these children in Guatemala. ChildFund is giving us that unique opportunity, all of us, you guys and us, to serve God by loving these children through sponsoring a child today.
Perhaps you already sponsor a child. Would you consider sponsoring another child in Guatemala? Maybe honor one of your children, a new grandchild, a special niece or nephew. These kids are real kids with real dreams, just like the dreams of your kids and grandkids. We know because we met them. Kids that want to be doctors and lawyers and teachers and musicians, just like us.
Your child sponsorship of $36 a month will immediately link you with the child that you can write letters back and forth with, correspond, send pictures of you and your family, even potentially visit one day.
It really does take so little to make a big difference. Visit childfund.org/dinner conversations. A child is waiting. To learn more about dinner conversations, visit dinner-conversations.com.
And while you're there, check out some of our friendly merch. We've got show mugs and season 1 and 2 DVDs. And we got these little note cards so Mark can write me a note that says, "You're the best co-host
Oh,
ever."
yes. Well, you know, you get that after every episode. And what about this mug with our faces on it?
What says good morning better?
It's like we're on both sides, so now lefty or a righty, you get to see us every morning.
You know, I think it's time we get back to those guests.
Yeah, probably. Well, come to find out, Eric Metaxas is also a born-again believer. I mean, hardcore. And he's going to give you his testimony. Now, I always love finding out how people find their way to God. You know, I believe there are many ways to Jesus, but there's only one way to God, and that is Jesus. But his route to Jesus was quite interesting.
A unique experience. You know, I think we're hearing more and more as we hear more and more about the world and people in different parts of the world and how they are experiencing Jesus the Christ. And a lot of them are experiencing it through dreams. And Eric has a really incredible story about what's amazing to me is we hear all these stories from around the world about people having some, what I would consider seemingly miraculous experiences as far as their first introduction to God through Jesus. Maybe people who have an Islamic background and territories there having dreams about Jesus and grace and love that they've never experienced before. But Eric's an American. He was here in a culture. He went to church growing up and yet still had this supernatural experience that actually brought him to faith in God through Jesus. Tell us your personal story, because I think I read a book maybe 5-6 years ago. Brother Andrew, who's this Catholic priest who worked with a lot in Islamic countries and territories in the 50s and the 60s, and what they called Muslim background believers, MBBs. And it was dreams. It was visions that were bringing them to literally a contrast of what they never experienced before. I mean, that kind of personal story speaks.
So it wasn't a person who told you about
Well, no,
Jesus.
it was. I mean, it's a little complicated. It's not that complicated. Basically, I had some faith, and then by the time I graduated Yale, more and more I just kind of thought, that's just sort of for crazy right-wing people, and I live in a world of cultural sophisticates, and we don't know what's true. And guess what? we know that you can't know what's true. We know that if you're really smart, you know that nobody can have the answers to these unanswerable questions. So you're adrift. I was not pleased to be adrift. I wasn't happy. I wasn't saying, I'm psyched, I can sin, let's have fun.
Yeah.
I was just confused. And so I wasn't like a militant atheist. I wasn't happy about it, but I just didn't see that the Christians could be right or anybody could be right. So I was drifting along. I fell on really hard times, which is to say I moved back in with my parents. And that was tough. And because my parents are, working class European immigrants, they don't have any patience for like, oh, we work menial jobs to send you to Yale and now you got problems. Like, you should be buying us a house. So I moved back in with them. I was about 24 and it was really a tough time for me. And I got the worst job you could get. And what job can you get with an English degree from Yale? None. I got a job as a proofreader at Union Carbide Corporation in Danbury, Connecticut. Hell on earth for me. Just miserable. And in that time, in that miserable time, I met a man, graphic designer, who started sharing his faith with me. And he was relentless. And I was relentlessly like, don't get too close. I'm not interested. But we kept talking and I was in enough pain that I'm willing to listen. Well, that went on for like 10 or 11 months of just kind of cat and mouse where I'm pretending sort of to believe it, but I haven't had an experience. But every once in a while, I'm like, Lord, if you're there, give me a sign. I don't even believe I'm talking to God. I'm just like, if you're there, give me a sign. I hope you're there, but I don't think you're there. But if you are there, give me a sign.
Right.
Well, one day, right around my 25th birthday, I had a dream. And in the dream, it's a long story. If you go to my website, it's just my name, ericmetaxas.com. There's an I Am Second video. And in my and in my miracles book, I tell the story as well. But for our purposes here, I'll just say that in the dream, Jesus made it super clear. He's real. He knows me better than I know myself. I mean, he blew my mind. And when it was over, I was like, that's it. Game over. I know Jesus
like
is
a
Lord.
Damascus.
The Bible is true. It was. And from that day, I'm born again. I'm sold out. Now, it doesn't mean I don't have questions.
Yeah.
But
Along for that ride?
my parents were not happy with this.
Oh, they weren't?
They were not
Greek
happy with the
Orthodox, right?
fanatical Eric Metaxas that they raised. No, because look, imagine the arrogance of a 25-year-old son saying to his father, who took him to Greek Orthodox Church every week, I become a Christian. He'd be like, you become a Christian, and what have we been?
Yeah,
Buddhists,
right,
Muslims,
right,
atheists?
right.
Like, we go to church every Sunday, remember? So he was hurt and offended, and I'm like, well, that's dead religion. And, as young men can be arrogant and testosterone-filled. And so I basically was not able to really square the circle at that time. And so for many, many years, I think it was upsetting to my dad. It was like I rejected him and his background. And, and it's really not, it's not a good thing. And I think Christians, especially new Christians, need to be encouraged to shut up sometimes.
Yeah.
So I was, I think it was confusing for them and my whole family because I was, even more fanatical than I am now in a sense, right? Because it's just the zeal of the
Fresh and new.
converted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it took years, I think, of them watching my life to see like, no, I'm not crazy. No, God has made a better person of me. But it took a long time. And my dad in particular, he's 90 now. He clearly gets it. And that's the joy of my life, that the Father that I love, he understands Jesus is his friend. He prays but let this be a lesson to people. It can take a long time. And if you think you're going to argue somebody into the kingdom, you're a fool.
A baby's
Shut up,
never been argued out of the
love 'em.
womb.
There you go.
Well, okay, so the conversion thing, though, this I think is really, relatable to a lot of people who are thinking that what conversion means is this moment in time, this one experience, there's a flip, everything's reversed.
For some people, that's true.
But you've said your conversion experience was not something of suddenly feeling guilty about everything and changing.
No. I'm not kidding that this is important, right? That when I came to faith, I wasn't like, oh, Jesus forgave me my sins or whatever. Absolutely not. That was not an issue for me. I wasn't walking around with a load of guilt. Mm-hmm. Now, intellectually, I got that. Intellectually, I understood that. But that's not what moved me.
Right.
Now, a lot of people say, well, then that's not a thorough conversion.
Uh-huh.
It is what it is. I mean, I have been a believer before I had that conversion. Maybe the Lord used this to close the deal and to make it clear who he is because my heart was inclined to him, but I didn't understand it. I mean, who knows? All I know is it's really bad when you create a paradigm and you insist that people buy into that paradigm. Because that way, if you've always believed, you think like, well, I guess I got to have a period of backsliding so I can come to faith. Otherwise, it's not authentic. For me, I really had a heart for God as a teenager, and I was not discipled, and I just drifted. But even when I was at Yale, I went to the Christian group on campus for a semester.
Really?
I don't know what the heck I was thinking, but I went, and I was kind of there, and I didn't like it, and I just kind of drifted away. And the next thing you know, 4 or 5 years have passed, and I'm lost. I'm sleeping with my girlfriend. I don't know the meaning of life. I'm pretty sure you can't know the meaning of life. That's how far I drifted. And so the Lord brought me back. Now, was I hell-bound the day before that dream? I hope not, but I certainly may have been. I don't know. All I know is that after that dream, I knew Jesus was Lord. I knew that I was a sinner that needed to have grace and love my enemies, and on and on and on and on, and that I'm under his judgment, that I need to care about what he thinks, not what other people think. That something happened to me overnight. It happened in a dream. I don't know anybody else to whom that kind of thing happened in a dream. Maybe that proves I'm a Muslim secretly. I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. I love quotes in general, and you're very quotable, which I'm very happy about. Okay, it was as though I was a prince exiled from another kingdom, and whenever I saw hints of that other kingdom, I hoped to find the way back. This kind of
I wrote
idea,
that?
You did.
Where?
So can you, in Miracles. Okay.
Wow. Yeah, it's not bad.
It's beautiful, unless you were quoting someone else and I
No,
quoted it
the
as
way
you.
back. No.
Where?
I
Way
don't
back
know.
home.
Yeah,
right?
it's an inborn longing is what I hear. Like, it seems as if...
Of course.
I remember asking my dad as like a 5-year-old, being like, I feel foreign. I feel away from something. And he was like, you are. So this inborn longing, like, I don't think we always like to... I think there's importance in being here and now, because we can bide our time.
Right.
And I think this is already bringing, God's kingdom as
well,
it is.
no, and that's quite right. Now, there's the idea that when we go to heaven, God's kingdom starts. No, Jesus said it starts the minute you receive me.
Yes.
It starts here, and you are my ambassadors, and the kingdom expands from here, which is why we need to serve the poor and the hungry and the downtrodden. I mean, we're meant to start here, but we don't get all the way there until he returns or we get to heaven. But yeah, I mean, this has been a big problem of evangelicalism, right? Is that we make it really cerebral and really otherworldly, and it's all about salvation. And what that does is it leaves, all the work of all of God's work to like the government or to leftist humanists who just say like, well, we're doing this. We don't know why, but we're just doing this. We're supposed to know why.
We have like the motivation.
We're supposed to have the motivation.
Yeah.
But I think that's what happened in the church, right? Is that there's this divide. Something happened, let's say in the 1920s, but around the Scopes trial, there's this cultural divide where some people said, well, we're just going to do the good stuff. And other people said, we're just going to believe the important stuff. And they sort of drifted away from each other. That's a bummer, because we are meant to be doing God's work here, which is one of the reasons, ironically, that I think Christians need to be political. It doesn't mean only political, but the point is that we need to be involved in the things of this world because God is in this world, because human beings are suffering in this world. I mean, when I told people that I thought they should vote for Trump, it didn't mean, hey, I think Trump's awesome. And it meant that I made a calculation that if you care about that 8-year-old black kid in the project, you need to think in your head which president is going to help him more. Now, if you think there's an easy answer to that, there's no easy answer. But don't pretend don't pretend your faith can let you say, I'm going to sit this one out. I think this world is dirty. We need to roll up our sleeves. It's kind of like Bonhoeffer. He would have preferred not to get involved in the plot to kill Hitler, but he said, I don't think God's given me that option. I think that God's going to judge me. Did I try to figure it out? And I tried, and this was my solution. If I'm wrong, I cast myself on the mercy of God and say, Lord, please forgive me. I've led others astray. Forgive me. But we've got to try. We've got to be. Wilberforce was told by everyone, keep your faith private. Slavery has always been with us. It's a reality. And he said, no, I think God is calling me to get involved. Now, my salvation is not in the slave issue.
Right.
But my faith leads me to care about the suffering people.
Right.
And so I really think that's an important part of real faith, is living out our faith in every aspect to the best that we can. And
But it's almost
it's not
become
easy.
like if you're not a Republican, you're not a Christian.
Wasn't that true? What do you mean?
No, seriously. I mean, do you believe if Christ was here, he would have been a Republican?
If Christ were here, I am sure he would have been a Whig.
A who?
A Whig.
Oh, really?
No, I mean, I think you can't Christ be a Republican.
I know,
I mean, there's no
I'm
way
saying,
he would
are
be a
there
Republican
not
or
two
Democrat.
different-
No.
These are two different kingdoms.
Like two paradigms?
But here, let me say this. We all have to make political calculations. But let's face it, both parties are darn flawed. Like, there's no doubt about it. So
Yeah.
anybody who says the Republican Party is the solution or Trump is the solution, never. Then you're making an idol of politics. But I still do think that we have to kind of work it out.
You can help change the life of a child today by partnering with Andrew and me and supporting a boy or girl in Guatemala through ChildFund today.
Your sponsorship will not only improve the future of one child's life, your child's sponsorship will promote communities in Guatemala. The communities that Mark and I just visited, where we saw parents who are learning to value and to protect and to advance the worth and rights of their teens and children, who through your child's sponsorship are literally changing the culture of each child's community from the inside out.
Perhaps you already sponsor a child. Would you consider sponsoring another child in Guatemala? Maybe in honor of one of your children, a new grandchild, a special niece or nephew. It takes so little to make such a profound difference in the life of a child.
Your sponsored child is a real kid with real dreams, just like the dreams of your children and grandchildren. We know because we met them. Kids that want to be doctors and lawyers and teachers, even musicians, kind of like us. Your sponsorship gives these children their chance to achieve their very unique dreams.
You may not be able to change the whole world, but you can change the world for one child. Visit childfund.org/dinner conversations to sponsor a child in Guatemala today. As a small way to say thanks for your child's sponsorship, we will send you an autographed Season 2 DVD and Songs from the Set CD.
Yes, plus a special item made just for you by the communities in Guatemala.
And every sponsor and a guest is invited to a Dinner Conversations Friends and Family Weekend in Nashville.
Hey now, which includes meal times with Mark and me, private little concerts and chit chats with our friends, and a special Sunday morning service that will happen right before you head out of town.
And if you sponsor more than one child, you will have the opportunity to be a guest on an actual episode of Dinner Conversations during the Friends and Family Weekend in Nashville.
Does it get better than that?
No.
Does it, Mark? Does it? Stay tuned for exact details, and don't forget to visit childfund.org/dinner conversations to sponsor your child today.
All right, let me ask you this. You start to say in the book, and for our viewers, I think this would be interesting, is you said you were going to change some misconceptions, or there's some...
About Luther.
About Luther. Give me some of those.
Well, there are a lot, and it's kind of funny. It's almost like a pastor for a sermon. I found 7, right?
Yeah.
And some of them are big, and some of them are not. A lot of people believe, because you see things in retrospect, they believe that he was this reformer who was just like hopped up to kill the Pope from day one.
Right.
Absolutely not true. He was a humble son of the church who loved his church. And when he nailed the 95 Theses to the door of the castle church, if he did, we think he did, whatever, but whenever that happened, he was trying to get a civil, think of the irony, trying to get a civil conversation going on the issue of indulgences, which he knew most people would agree, like, yeah, there's problems here.
Right.
Right? Mm-hmm. But instead, and it's kind of like the climate we're in today, instead, it's as if he tweeted something out and everybody went nuts, and we never got back to the actual conversation. He didn't get to say, oh, by the way, I made a mistake on that word. It just went insane. And so basically, you have a situation where people think of him as a troublemaker. Now, he did become a troublemaker, but that was really in response to what happened. In other words, he felt that he was so mistreated that he thought, am I dealing with Antichrist? I mean, if I'm dealing with the church, they should be thanking me for trying to bring this stuff up. I mean, I'm speaking after the manner of men. It's much more complicated, but it is kind of interesting that things quickly spun out of control. But when he nailed the 95 Theses to the door, he really was not looking to start trouble. But people act like this was the moment, like he's with the hammer, he's
Right.
there again. And it's like nothing of the kind. In fact, it was like a bulletin board, and it's kind of like, if he did it with Scotch tape, that it had all the effect of a guy going down to the laundry room to the bulletin board and putting up with Scotch tape. We're going to have a theological debate. And he put it up there. It had all the drama of that, but it's portrayed in retrospect like this was the moment when he stood. Even the Diet of Worms, as brave as his stand was 4 years later, he was not there like shaking his fist at anybody. He was hoping desperately that God could bring about peace. And so I think you're being told you have 5 minutes.
Yes, I see.
Something like that.
It's around.
I just, it was a metaphor. It was a hand, but I read it as a metaphor. But so that's kind of one. And then we don't even know, we're pretty sure he didn't nail the theses up on the date we say, number one. We don't even know that he did nail the theses up. He might have used paste, or he might have given them to the custodian, no joke, to post them. So it's kind of, we see that in retrospect. One of my favorite ones is the theory that the 9 nuns that escaped from the Nimshin convent, you hear over and over and over. Every book on Luther says that they escaped in herring barrels that had held herring, that they hid in them. I said, oh, that's so cool. I'm going to put that in my book. So I did all this research, and I found not only do we not know whether it happened, we actually do know that it didn't happen.
Oh, wow.
Totally didn't happen. But there's all kinds of stuff like that. I mean, we don't have time here, but there's some kind of significant things and some little things. It's important to know what's true.
Right.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
I say that in my own life today about whether we're arguing politics or whatever. Argue about what you know is true. Don't argue from your emotion or what you want to believe. Let's try to get it right. And when you're writing biography, history, try to get it right. Yeah. And so anybody who accuses me of like putting myself into the book, I'm like, listen, dudes, I'm trying harder than anybody not to do that. If you think I did, what can I tell you? But if you can show me, I will change it. Because I think that history and facts and reason are really important. What can I tell you?
Well, I appreciate it because you put the cookies on the bottom shelf, and I like that. I'm serious.
That is so funny because so many people said, like, I need a dictionary reading your book, Eric, and stuff. And you make it sound like I wrote a book for everybody, which was my goal.
Well, you did, because I'm everybody.
Yeah.
I am. I'm not the smartest.
Thank you.
Person,
but that's been amply demonstrated in this conversation, honestly.
And I agree.
And I appreciate you. I appreciate that. I love people who pretend to be all humble. This is a smart guy.
Take this. We only got a couple minutes, but secret vocabulary of the heart. When you say that, like, do you believe that God is literally trying to reach us in that most intimate place?
Of course. That's the point. In other words, people kind of act like, well, you heard the gospel, and that. It's like, no. God, we have a God that wants to translate the gospel, the good news that he loves you, in the most personal language imaginable. Imagine kissing your kid on the face, how much you love them. God says, like, no, it's a theory, it's a doctrine, here it is. Have you heard it in English? Well, then good. He wants to communicate it to us. So how will he communicate it to us? In a million ways. And since every child is different, God is the same, but he communicates differently to each one of us. To me, he communicated in a dream in a way that would have made no sense to anybody else.
And a New Yorker.
And a New Yorker. And a damn
you're not
New Yorker.
Right?
Actually, I pray in tongues, and I believe in the move. I believe in all that crazy stuff.
Yeah.
You think, well, sophisticated Yale graduates surely wouldn't believe in that stuff. I believe Jesus rose from the dead. I believe in tongues. I'm straight up Jesus freak on every level.
I am too.
Yeah, praise God.
I love it.
I really am. I am. I believe in healing, deliverance, all that crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's true.
Yeah. I've enjoyed this.
Amen. Well, me too.
I want you guys, what an honor this is.
I'm so glad
serious.
I didn't take a bite. I would have missed something.
The kingdom of God and America, or any other kingdom in this world, they're two separate kingdoms. To live in the kingdom of God, you've got to die. To get, you got to give. To be first, you got to be last. I heard a pastor say one time, the kingdom of God is like backing up a trailer. Whichever way you think to go, do the opposite, and you're probably right. And it's two separate kingdoms. And I vote, but that's all I'm going to tell you about how I think politically, because it's none of your business. And I think it clouds the waters.
Yeah, it's this
when you're trying to tell them about Jesus, I think it clouds the waters.
Right. If Jesus is the main point, which in my life, he has been the main point, and it's who I want to be my focus, my focal point. So I feel like it's just such an easy distraction to get into the game of whether it be politics or whether it be any hot topic in culture. These are important conversations. As you know, we love hard conversations here at Dinner Conversations. But the main focus of any conversation, the foundation of the reason we even sit at the same table and talk together, sometimes we disagree on certain things.
Gosh.
But it's Jesus. It's we. What I always love to say is he sets the table for communion. We just all get invited to it, and everyone is invited. So I love how Eric has expressed that through his story of spirituality. And
let everybody get next to Jesus, and he'll fix what's broken in all of us.
So thank you so much to our new friend, Eric Metaxas. We have loved having him on this episode of Dinner Conversations.
And we love you joining us every episode.
Sure
We'll
do.
see you next time on Dinner Conversations. Well, we want to thank Eric Metaxas for giving us his opinion today.
That's right. You can find his books in the Amazon affiliate link in the episode description below.
And if you want to binge watch Dinner Conversations, you can do that right now.
You really should.
On Amazon Prime. Dinner Conversations is brought to you by ChildFund, a community development organization that has been envisioning a world where every child is free to live at their fullest potential, no matter where they're from or what challenges they face since 1938.
Partner with us and our good friends at ChildFund to change the world and the life of a child by considering sponsoring a child today.
It really does take so little to make a difference.
Visit childfund.org/dinner conversations.
A child is waiting.